Hello and welcome back, friends. Buddy here at Haas of Props, and I'm super excited to share with you the process that I used to make this Gondorian Fountain Guard helmet from the Lord of the Rings. Let's get started. I begin by sealing up the darts in both Part A pieces with contact cement. They're small, but these darts will help give the helmet the needed curve. If you haven't already yet done so, go ahead and subscribe to this channel so you can see the many future projects happening. When the darts are closed, I started to bend the pieces by hand in order to help give it the curve. By doing this, it will put less tension on the glue. Next, the two Part A's were attached to each other. Make sure you take your time and align the outer edges as best as you can, because the less of an edge will mean less cleanup in the end. In order to get the point on the helmet to close properly, I beveled about 2 inches on each side. This removes some of the foam and you don't end up with an odd shape up at the top point. Then this edge can be closed. Next, Part B can be attached to the bottom of the A section. You want to align the edge with the center seam on A, and again, try to get the seam as smooth as possible. I found it easier to attach both B pieces to A first, then the B seams can be closed. The same process is repeated with Part C along the bottom of the B section. And then again with Part D. Once I had everything pressed together, I took my heat gun and lightly heated the cheek guards because I needed to give them a slight curve, where they cover the cheek but flare out at the bottom. Then I took my rotary tool with a sanding drum and cleaned up any edges that needed a little smoothing. Since I already had this tool out, I went ahead and started carving the details into all the 4mm foam feathers. I drew a line down the middle to act as a guide and angled my mark making based on it. The carving on Part F needed to follow the line and is only beveled on one side of that line. Part G is similar, except in the center I needed to bevel out both directions from the center line. Then the process used on Part F is repeated on all the other lines. Part E was centered on the seam of the helmet and glued into place. Then Part F can be glued above the eye openings in the helmet, almost as if they were eyebrows. You can see that I drew some placement lines with a ballpoint pen. I have found doing this helps with alignment, especially when you have pieces that need to be symmetrical. Part G is glued where the bottom curve sits just on top of Part F. The bottom edge is the only spot that gets glued, the rest remains loose. Part H is glued to the sides of the helmet. For mine, I placed the bottom corner point on the Part B and C seam, but if you adjust the template scale, you may need to check the alignment. At this point, I used my heat gun to seal the foam so I could begin to clean up the seams before attaching the side pieces. To smooth the seams, I'm using Quick Seal Plus. I apply the caulk to the seam with a palette knife and scrape a lot of the excess away without digging into the seam. Then I dip my finger in water and smooth out the caulk so there won't be any visible edges on the surface of the helmet. Quick Seal does shrink when it dries, so I did need to repeat this step. I did this an additional 4 times because I wanted as smooth of a surface as possible. When the caulk dried, I wanted to check to see how smooth the helmet would look when painted, so I applied a layer of Plasti Dip. This will show me if there are any spots that need more caulk, and I can add it before continuing with the assembly. While the Plasti Dip dried, I assembled the wing side pieces. I began by sandwiching part J between 2 pieces of part I. You want to make sure that both parts I don't attach themselves together because you want the open groove as the spot for the feathers to be inserted. I glued the feathers into the groove with CA glue. I began at the bottom with number 15 and worked my way up the wing to number 1. The feathers do slightly overlap, so you may need to trim the insert edge on some of the feathers to get them to sit into the groove properly. Once the feathers are in place, I attach the 4 pieces of part K to the wings with contact cement. To create the vine filigree on the helmet and wings, I began by drawing the design with a ballpoint. Then I squeeze puffy 3D paint along these lines. You want a tip that has a very small opening because this will prevent the paint from coming out too fast and give you a nice clean line. You can also use a toothpick to thin out any spots that might be too thick. The same technique is used on all the filigree areas. I let the paint sit overnight before I attached the wings to the sides of the helmet. Once they were attached, I applied 3 layers of Plasti Dip to the entire helmet. When the Plasti Dip had cured, I airbrushed the metal areas of the helmet with a metallic silver acrylic in order to avoid getting brush marks. I almost forgot, so at this point I added 2 strips of 2mm foam to the inside of the helmet. This will help hold the helmet in the correct position on the wearer. Test the fit before you glue these into place. To achieve the correct metal finish, I make a very thin jet black wash and brush this onto the metallic surface. Then using an old cloth, I dab up the majority of the paint. The paint that's left, along with the texture from the cloth, will take the helmet from looking like silver to looking more like steel. I then baste the feathers with a white acrylic. I used a gold enamel to highlight all the filigree detailing. I have found enamel to work better than an acrylic for something like this because it keeps a better luster when it dries. Then I mixed burnt sienna with a little raw umber and made a wash that I then brushed onto the feathers, and then using the cloth wiped the majority of it away. This will help give the feathers a more realistic dimension instead of keeping them brilliant white. And there you have it, a Gondorian fountain guard helmet made completely out of EVA foam. And the thing about this template is, with just a few adjustments to certain elements, you can make every third Age Gondorian helmet there is. I hope you liked this build. If you did and would like to make one for yourself, you can find a link to the template in the below description. And please give this video a thumbs up, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Haas of Props. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at Haas of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.